Welcome back to the Irish Mags Show, your weekly Newcastle United podcast brought to you by the Irish Mags NUFC supporters group. My name is Paul. I will be your host for today. And unfortunately, we are missing Krisho this week. There are rumours that he is off trying to recruit a Jeff Hendrick Appreciation Society. So, if that's happening, fine, we may not see Krisho again. However, in his absence, I am delighted to say that we are joined by the man who recently and successfully proposed to his other half in an Irish Mags top. It is Mr. Alan Williamson. Say hello, Alan.
How's it going, lads? How are we?
Great to have you back, Alan. And I'm also happy to say that we are joined by the Lord Mayor, the High Chief of the Irish Mags. It is Mr. Tevin Fareed. Say hello, Tev.
What's the story? Also the Lord Mayor of the Gabriel Overton enthusiast group. So, yeah.
Oh, dear. He's brought the tone down straight away. Excellent. Thank you, Tev. We're delighted to have you back on the show. And I'm also delighted to say that we are joined by a special guest this week, making his Irish Mags Show debut, a man not only renowned in the Newcastle United community, but also for his work with the Premier League, with True Faith, with BBC Radio and Absolute Radio. Most recently seen playing Scale Extric with Alexander Isak, Sven Botman, Sean Longstaff, Paul Dummett and Matt Ritchie, to name a few. It is, of course, broadcaster, podcaster, journalist, radio presenter, and I believe a fellow Guinness enthusiast, judging by what I've seen on his Twitter feed. It is Mr. EmilFranchi. Welcome in for your Irish Mags debut, Emil.
Oh, what a wonderful intro there. And I must say I'm leading the charge to find a really good pint of Guinness in London and getting there. Slowly but surely getting there, yeah.
We could go straight on a tangent. There is a renowned Twitter page.
I know it well.
All about the shitload of Guinness.
I know it well.
Maybe the less said about that, the better, but there's a lot of bad. It feels like there's more bad than good from what I see.
Yeah, I think they're trying too hard, to be honest. But then sometimes I think about it and I go, as long as it's in the right glass, it's a pint of Guinness. So yeah, we could go down that path, but I'll stop there. I'll stop us there.
Well, we'll probably talk about it at the end, Emil, but we can tell you where you get a very good pint of Guinness, and it's here in Ireland whenever you're.
Whenever you're.
Why didn't I think of that? Yeah.
Yes. And I will also add the west of Ireland, but I have to say that, being a Galway man. Right. What a show we have in store for you this week, listeners. It is the international break, so we're a little bit stress-free, I would say, considering there's no match to preview or review. I think that gives us an opportunity to have some fun, lads, especially with Emil joining us. We've given him loads of kind, generous hospitality before we hit the record button, but I think it's time to flip that on its head. We're going to be putting Emil under the spotlight, talking about all of his Newcastle United origins, his career highlights to date. And lads, we're also going to do a very special segment this week. I asked each of you to put together a little top 5 ranking of what would be your best or your favourite foreign imports or foreign players to have played for Newcastle in the Premier League era, which we always have to remind Krisho is since 1992, 1993. And what we're going to do is, very quickly, by foreign, we do mean non-UK and non-Irish. So again, sorry, Krisho, no Jeff Hendrick this week. But what we're going to do is go through each of yours and mine, top 5, and hopefully, peacefully, without too much controversy, come out of this show with an Irish Mags unanimous top 5 foreign players to have played for Newcastle. Emil, you're looking very calm and collected, so it's time to put an end to that. Even though you have been running around the house trying to sort out your internet before we hit record. We're going to turn our focus to you, if you don't mind. In case any of our listeners don't really know you, Emil, we'd love to hear your kind of Newcastle United origins. Maybe you can share with us kind of how it all started, and in particular, maybe your earliest Newcastle United memories.
Yeah, so to those that don't, maybe wondering why I don't sound like a thicker Geordie accent than what some do. Then yeah, my dad is from South Tyneside, and I've got my mum's from just south in Washington, so that's where that came together. And yeah, I've got like connections with Newcastle United. My dad obviously went to a lot of the games when he was younger. Was at the Fairs Cup home game where we won it all those years ago to give his age away. My mum's dad, he was a big Newcastle fan as well, and obviously my dad's dad as well, all kind of going back there. So it's all linked in. And then I grew up in South Durham, and the indoctrination started, you might say. Can't really remember the first time I I was aware of supporting Newcastle, but when in the late 90s, when I think I started becoming conscious about football properly, that was when names like Shearer and others would come in. But sadly, probably just too young to remember the mid 90s where it was all really happening. And my first memories of my dad at Newcastle were pretty much him getting annoyed that Don Hutchinson had scored the winner in the derby. And I think we were in Eldon Square at the time for some reason. And he was not a happy man. And I asked why. And that's pretty much where that all went from. So, yeah, that's maybe where it was.
You kind of have to learn the hard way sometimes, I think.
Yeah, you really do, yeah.
Yeah, because we've gone through our own origin stories in the past. Obviously, as Irish fans, Emil, it's a bit different for us because we would have all grown up in schools or villages, whatever towns, where it's just Man United and Liverpool and Arsenal fans. That's just how it goes. Yeah. So where we would have grown up, we would have been those odd, isolated lads in a black and white kit all by ourselves. Alan knows all about it as well. We probably still are to an extent, but now we just come together every week. And in terms of going to games, then, Emil, like you've given away a bit of your age. Obviously, you said your dad was at that Fairs Cup. I want to say that was 1960.
I wasn't there. I wasn't there, by the way. Just
no, you weren't there.
yeah. Doing
Chris
very
may
well.
have been. But for your own kind of, can you remember your own, like maybe your first visit to St. James's Park? We've had some of our Irish mags bring their own kind of kids and sons and so on over to games, and we've seen that video where you walk up those steps and you see the pitch for the first time. Can you remember yours? Is a question.
Yeah, no, totally. I remember my first game. It was Boxing Day 2001, where we beat Middlesbrough 3-0. And apologies if anyone's heard this story before, but my dad wasn't ever that keen on buying tickets for games. He still isn't, and I always I always ask the question of like, hang on a minute, you loved going to watch Newcastle when you were younger, but I think, he's one of these purists of price and just general apathy in the recent years has certainly given him no desire to go. So, when I was growing up, it was very much like, and he took me to the stadium on that day, which I thought was strange. And we stood outside for ages. And then eventually his cousin turned up, who was over from the States doing another like foreign supporters trip, because he does like these soccer tours over there. And he greeted him. And prior to him actually turning up, my dad was like, "Oh, yeah, don't worry, stick around here, you might see someone famous." And I was like, "Everyone's going to the match. No one's going to stop." Anyway, so my dad's sentimental way of getting me into the stadium for the first time to watch a game, it was like, oh, his cousin turned up, as I say, and that's when he said, I was like, he thought he said someone famous was going to come. He said he's famous in his own right, son, and I went, okay, fair enough. And I was, it's really weird. Everyone says about that first thing when you walk up the steps. My first experience, this hasn't set, for me at all. This is not how I live my life. But we were in the Bambra Suite, of all places. So nice. we had my first game at Newcastle United was corporate. I wish I could have kept it up. I know, but we had a lovely Cumberland sausage on Boxing Day, and the rest went from there. But that was my first game. Like I say, 3-0. I think it was Shearer stumbled a ball into the net. Gary Speed and maybe Oliver Bernard, I think, was the 3 goals in that one. And we actually, one of the nicest things I can say, and again, learning the hard way here, but my first game was Newcastle fans, and I don't think it's been sung since, to be honest. We are top of the league. We were actually singing that at the end of the game. So maybe I started the curse. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the slight good news is we did probably sing it since, but we were top of the championship.
Not really singing that.
Maybe that doesn't count. That doesn't count. You mentioned a couple of player names there. I love to hear a goal from Olivier Bernard. That's kind of like Newcastle heritage right there. And not something you see every day.
That's my credit. That's my credit if people ask where I was before the takeover. I mean, like, I saw Olivier Bernard score a goal.
I saw Olivier Bernard score. We actually had it on the pod a while back, lads, where we had that clip of, was it Robert was kicking that ball, and it just
Yeah.
basically knocked out Olivier Bernard, and he just fell in his arse.
Beautiful.
Good times. Did you have a particular player, like a favourite player, Emil, growing up, or someone? I mean, a lot of people always Shearer, but was there anyone in particular you had a connection to, or was it, of course, Shearer for obvious reasons?
Yeah, Shearer for obvious reasons, absolutely. But if you did want kind of like who my next one down was, without going into my list of who we've got, I was a big fan of Craig Bellamy. I really loved his pace, and I think that the thing with Shearer was, I think it was like I think my second game or third game. The second game was a cup game against Palace. Third game was actually the one where he scored that goal against Everton. So that was my third ever game at Newcastle, and I remember my dad like telling me how good he took that goal, but I didn't have a clue what any of that meant back then. I didn't know much about the game, and then watching it back, it's obviously become his most famous one. But yeah, no, I loved Bellamy. I think it was the one where I was like almost in disbelief when he fell out with Souness, hearing about how that was the first time where things for me started to go a bit west, and you thought to yourself, oh, we can't keep this band together. I remember being outraged when I saw Rob Lee in a Derby shirt. I was like, whoa, that's wrong. He's smashing heads with Shearer, I think, at the time. Warren Barton's there at the back. What's going on? Was messing with my head. So, yeah, Bellamy's probably the one where, you get that feeling of like, oh, they're leaving. Oh, he's not allowed to play for another team. So that's pretty much that.
I think as well, Bellamy, like one of those players I would imagine you just hate playing against.
Oh yeah.
In terms of his speed, his quality, but also just.
Well, we did eventually.
Yeah. True. And he kind of, in a way, it probably reminds me a bit of Anthony Gordon. Same way, I think a lot of opposition teams and players, there might be a dislike of Anthony Gordon, but equally they just do not like coming up against him, which is nice to see as well. And then another this is always an interesting question, because I'm going to ask you for your highlight as a Newcastle fan, and it will be followed by your low light. And there's always a conflict of emotion on that one.
Can I do a top five for those?
Yeah, I'm sure you've got. Sometimes we have more. Sometimes we have more low lights than highlights. Is there a particular moment throughout your, let's say, your Newcastle fandom that's a highlight? Maybe as a fan, Emil, and obviously you've worked with the club. Maybe there's something else that goes alongside that.
Well, you can work with the club. You can go and do these interviews there as many times as you like, but it never compares, obviously, to the actual match day. But I think that I was at the Arsenal 4-4 and didn't leave. So that was a pretty. Although it was a draw, and I know that it might be mocked that our greatest game, in the Premier League isn't a win, but that one is up there where I don't think I've ever heard a noise like it, or felt the actual, floor vibrating. That was a real moment. Wow. And then to know, the folklore, I guess, of that game, and how it, the commentary from Justin Lockwood on local radio and stuff with the boom boom shake the room. It's like everything around it, that clip and everything was great. And that was just before I went to university. And then in my first year of university was actually, it was the time that Ashley dropped the tickets to half price for season tickets. So it was like, 4 games in, they're doing well, let's sell more. And me and my mate were like, well, not to be a scab or anything here, but I can't say no as a student to a £125 or something ticket in the Gallagher end. I was like, say cheers, Mike. See you later. Yeah. But in that season, there was the 3-0 at home to Man United. And funnily, going back to Guinness, it's just after New Year. I was staying. I went to Newcastle Uni, and I was in Castle Leazer's accommodation, which is just behind the field. And there was always a thing with my first year of uni where I'd either be just rolling out of bed and get there for kickoff. My mate would be like, "How was last night?" I went, "Don't ask." Anyway, game's on, and away we went. But sometimes it was quite like nice where we'd have like a random night where no one else was at uni because it was just after the Christmas holidays. That was the Man United game. But yeah, the 3-0 against them with Demba Ba and the Phil Jones, and of course the Cabaye goal as well. Just to give you a quick hint of who might be coming later in my top 5, because that game is good. But yeah, the game was sensational, and it started a bit of a almost like a what do you call it, superstitious kind of thing in getting a chicken botley pie and a Guinness at half time.
Oh,
Because we went into the break, and I was still eating that chicken balti pie, and the Guinness was probably still going down because you've got to be like Quicksilver drinking pints when you're in those concourses to get back in. And then we had a free kick, and Kabay scored, and I haven't seen the rest of that pie since. so that will always go down as the one. Chicken balti and Guinness was kind of the thing that we kept saying each other for the rest of it, and I think for the rest of that season I did try and do it.
I'm sure somebody saw that pie, but it wasn't you. Somebody had to clean it up.
Straighten them out like that Hearts player the other week who caught it through in the air. That'd be him. That's what happened.
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned pies as well, because I was at the Spurs game, the 6-1 where we were like 5-0 up on 20 minutes. And my mate actually with me, he was like insisting on getting a pie going in. Not even for superstition reasons. He just was fucking hungry.
just get a pie.
And
It's good
you
enough.
remember like that goal went in quite early, the first goal, because we literally had just sat down in the seats when the kickoff happened. So he's got the pie on his lap, and he's like, right, we're settled, and then goal up in the air, and he manages to hold on to it, and then he sits down and he's like, okay, here we go again. It's 2 or 3 minutes later, score again. So it got to like the third goal, pie gone, but I said the same thing to him as well. Superstition, always get a pie from now on.
Maybe that's why Jacob Murphy opened his mouth so wide. That was what
He was
saw
looking
it
for it.
coming on. I missed him just. Yeah, that's the one.
Jacob Murphy. Eternal memes from Jacob Murphy. Right, on to the dreaded topic, Emil. Lowlight as a Newcastle United fan.
First relegation was a like a death in the family feeling. That was. I remember it was a sunny day, and because of what the other results were doing, you thought to yourself, "Oh, yeah, come on, it's going to happen." And yeah, that feeling in the garden that day prepared me probably for every bad football thing that would come to Newcastle. Again, kind of going back to the Bellamy thing, it's like, is this possible? Are we allowed to go down? No, surely not. Something's going to change. And, you think to yourself, bloody whole city have survived and not us. How has this happened? No disrespect to Hull fans, because I've got mates who are, but, it was just very much like it's happened then. And I remember, because there was 3-0 Middlesbrough, weirdly, watching that on TV, thinking, that's the game that's going to save us. And then just watching everyone just not pull together for that final bit. It was just very much like, I guess, any team that has surprisingly gone down, like Leicester last year, perhaps. It was one of those feelings that I was just thinking to myself, oh, God. And then, many happy memories of watching Newcastle at uni. The years that followed was the Sunderland losses, and I was at 3-4 of them at home. I was at the first 3-0, the second 3-0. I was at the 1-0 around Christmas time when who should not be named, scored the winner, little dick. Well, there's a few of them at Sunderland, let's be honest. But different things. But but yeah, and then I think I watched a lot more of them elsewhere. And again, it was just like, what? How do we capitulate every single time against this team? But I guess they were probably asking the same thing of us when we were doing it too in the same league. So yeah, that first relegation really set me up for a big decade of misery, I guess. But there was some golden bits in there as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I think most of us, we talked about this before, lads. I think most of us have been over to championship games as well. It's not just for the glory days. There was elements where there were good results and all of that. But it was a tough time to be a Newcastle fan. I think it's that cliche of too good to go down. I think West Ham were a very good example that year. They originally went down. But you said it yourself, Emil. I can't believe it's actually happened, because it was just like, this is never going to happen. And then it did. And it's, looking back, it's insane for a club this size to have gone down. The one thing I wanted to pick your brain on there, Emil, because this will be different for us. For us, around here, you'd get a bit of mockery going, oh yeah, you support Newcastle, they're shit, they got relegated. And we're used to that, but, going out and losing to Sunderland and then having to go either university or walking around the city as a local, it's, how long does that last for? Is it weeks? Is it months? Does it never go away?
Well, I mean, if you're in Newcastle, you're kind of safe from it. Luckily, when I was at school in Bishop Auckland, which is again County Durham, there's a big split down the middle of fans there. So could safely walk around knowing that Newcastle fans never really had anything to worry about in those years. And then, yeah, to be fair, when we went down, it started to, the Sunderland fans appeared, and I don't know where they came from. Just suddenly, where you been on all these years? I didn't know you existed until now, but yeah, they came, and it's. It was tough, and I think that was when Facebook was just getting started, and you saw all these groups get set up, being like NUFC football banter and all that kind of thing. Well, Newcastle, Sunderland, and Middlesbrough fans welcome, but you're all crap as well. Just like just all that. All sorts.
That was you, Alan. I thought that was you, Alan, that set up all those.
Most of them, yeah, that's all me.
But yeah, no. It was like, I wouldn't say that there's as much shame of a loss, but yeah, I think afterwards, I just remember the just like when you're at uni as well, you're thinking to yourself, right, I'm in the pub, I'm going to just drink this away now, and off you go. So it sometimes became really horrible days. But I mean, the first one when we did lose 3-0, with the infamous horse fighting and things like that, that was actually probably the first time where I felt quite nervous and scared about what was going on, because I was like, Jesus God. And it was like, what do we do? Do we go home? It's like, yeah. So you heard all the stories from afar, but then you were also reminded, oh, this was because we lost 3-0 to Sunderland. Can everyone just calm down? But at that point, no one knew what it was like if we did lose to Sunderland, because it had been so infrequent. So strange times that was.
Things that never should have happened. I suppose we let them have their moment in the sun, and that's a long distant memory for them, thankfully, as it stands, especially after that lovely little cup fixture going back a couple of months ago. All right, as we move forward then, Emil, and we might kind of talk about your career path, really. An interesting career path, I have to say. Doing my my host duties, I was obviously doing a bit of research, but in particularly looking at your kind of, I suppose, your broadcasting media work with the club, work with the Premier League. Where did that all come about? I mean, obviously as a fan, this is, dream come true, and I'm sure you hear that a lot, but where did it all begin, I guess, in terms of that work and what you've kind of progressed onto since?
Yeah, well, one thing I will say about my career is that I'm as surprised as everyone else. That's kind of how I look at it, because I get a bit of a shock sometimes about the things that I've done, because really I never set out with a plan leaving school to go to university, but university was kind of where my inner passion to always do some sort of performance or anything like that, whatever it was. I guess you could call me an attention seeker, but very, very much taken from what I had at school of being that person to put the hand up to read. That has always just been my kind of outgoing nature. So yeah, as soon as I saw there was a student radio station, I was like, oh yeah, I've got to do this. Love music, always have, and probably a bit out of time with my music as well, due to what I grew up listening to. So it was like, oh, I can play all sorts of classic stuff and things like that. I'm a big fan of Queen and all that kind of thing. So that was where that started. And what kind of followed in the years after that was that I just lost all kind of whatever my degree was in history. I just wasn't interested in what I was writing about. I had no desire to, it's like my favorite thing with history was like, oh yeah, so this happened, and it'd be like, oh yeah, that's really interesting, and this is what this person has to say about it. And I was like, oh yeah, he makes a very good point. But why do you disagree? I was like, no, I don't. No, honestly, I'm fine with what he's written. And we've all done a load of Irish history, and there's always revisionist history and everything like that. I loved a bit of Irish history and doing all that side of things. And I just thought to myself, I was like, I'm reading these really good books, but I'm having to skim read them because there's about 1 million pages that I've got to read within 3 days. And I thought to myself, this isn't fun. So yeah. Did get through university and scraped by on what I did, but that was when radio took hold. I joined a hospital radio station in Newcastle, and that was the bit where starting to get like little prods and stuff from people to say like, oh, you're quite good at this, like if you put your mind to it, you could actually do well. And yeah, had a great hospital radio boss. Radio Tyneside is the station who actually do the coverage for Newcastle games for the patients. So when I was there, it was the Freeman Hospital, RVI, and the Queen Elizabeth in Gateshead. But Dave, the station manager there, he's allowed a load of people to go through the doors. And over the years, there's a lot of people who've done that voluntary side. And I was one of them, and he kind of took me under his wing, made sure that I was in front of the right people at various conferences and events. And towards the end of uni, I thought to myself, right, I've got a lot of these contacts now, better start using them. And I got a job in Stoke-on-Trent. And and I did actually go to the football game. I did go to the away game. My first ever away game was us losing to Stoke. Here's a real low light. This was one. Moving to Stoke, only to go and watch your football team lose to Stoke in the worst away end of all time, where they weren't doing any alcohol. In Stoke as well, and then having to go back home in Stoke. I must say Stoke's a very nice place once you get to know it. But yeah, it was like, okay, right, this isn't good, is it? So I made up for it by going to watch Stoke then beat Sunderland in the year they got relegated.
Okay.
But not before going to see Sunderland and Stoke draw 1-1, where Jermaine Defoe scored so late in the game. It was effectively the draw that probably led to us getting relegated, because Sam Allardyce then beat Everton in their spare game, which resigned us to going down again. So, wherever I go, I'm the Grim Reaper, apart from Korea. So, student radio, and then just kept going in commercial. And eventually made my way back to the northeast on a few diversions and worked for Hart there for a number of years. And that's kind of when I started getting into the fan media side of things. Started a bit with Gallagher Shots, and then did the initial fan cams that got cut short due to lockdown, and then picked it up again with True Faith when football started to come back. The team there are great. I think they produce really good content as well. So I was really keen to get involved, and then did the fan cams with them. I just asked Alex about it, and I just said, look, should we try it? And that was when the YouTube channel for True Faith wasn't really doing much, and that in turn was what led to me kind of doing a bit more interviews and stuff, because the takeover happened, and it was, again, being surprised by this, because I wasn't sure what was going on. It was like, can anyone go down to the stadium at like 11 o'clock and do Sky? And I was like, right, yeah. And I'd just got out the shower, or at least I hadn't showered either. And, obviously we were reacting to the news the night before. And that was when, my hand up approach to life kind of came in. It was very much, right, well, if you go, this might be pretty beneficial, because you never know what that comes to. So went and did it, and it was that interview when I did it for the Takeover Day, which got a lot of people kind of like starting to follow me and stuff on Twitter, which I love the Twitter following that I've kind of garnered from it, because I just think the people are brilliant, and everyone who's ever given the fan cam bits a bit of love, even if it's out and about now, I see people up in Newcastle when I go back, and sometimes in London, which is mesmerising when I'm on the tube. That was the guy off the videos. I was like, bloody hell, of all the places, like stuck between St. Paul's and Bank or something like that. No, it's just but, it's I do credit a lot of the support from the likes of True Faith and the fans to me getting the Premier League stuff, because again, that was another one where it was like, we need someone to do this. And I did one Premier League thing where they were interviewing myself within the stadium. And then, fast forward to that summer, the producer said, do you want to come and perhaps try doing a bit on the side for us as well? And I was like, yeah, great. And at this time, I'd just been offered a few shows at Radio 1. Absolute Radio came in, and it was at a time, maybe like 3 or 4 months ago before that, where I was quitting my job with Hearts to try and see what else was out there, and it all just fell into place. So since then that's happened. Done a fair few interviews for the Premier League on the other side of that camera now, which is really strange. Going from being interviewed to doing the interviews with fans sometimes in the live shows, and interviewing the players. And that got me kind of a bit more with Newcastle. I've done a few of the players now, like Wilson and Isak notably, and like you mentioned, the Scale Electrics one, the most recent one. But that wasn't the Premier League, which is the weird thing. So that was the one where just recently, Dan King, of course, who's like the media managing editor or all sorts of stuff, does all the interviews. Everyone knows the voice. Big Darlow fan as well, so got a little bit of a connection there with the south of Durham. A lot of us who've tried following teams down there. But yeah, no, Dan was just messaged me and said, look, we're doing this thing. And I think the club, you've seen how much they're doing now in terms of media. They're doing like media days, and there's Justin Pete Graves sometimes do it. Andy Sixsmith, of course, gets called in a few times for it. Does a lot of the interviews. So I was just like, really? Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, what you want? And he was like, oh, well, here's the brief, and you've seen the video. So, yeah, that's pretty much as fast as I can tell you without going into all of the details, good and bad. Lowlights, if you want the top 5 of that, I could easily do it from the world of radio. But yeah, no, it has been a whirlwind. It's been, just over 10 years now of kind of like trying my hand, but coming up to 10 years next year of actually being in radio, and that being like the actual media path that I took. So yeah, just it's all a bit wild. It's all a bit mad. The stuff that I get up to, like, I was at the Royal Albert Hall hosting a gig last week.
I was going to ask you about that actually. Yeah,
so, yeah. It's I wouldn't like to give myself a reputation, but I get around. So this is basically
because I did see. It's actually weird because I did actually see Noel Gallagher in Dublin 2 years ago, and it was Blossoms, I think, that supported him, and it looked like it was the same again, right, in that Royal Albert Hall gig you did for charity.
Yeah, Teenage Cancer Trust.
Were you partying hard with Noel Gallagher? That's what we want to know.
Oh, I wish. I did walk past the dressing room as I was leaving the Royal Albert Hall, and we were told, oh, there is an after party, and we got these wristbands, and I thought, oh, great, they'll all be there. But Noel Gallagher and Blossoms were very much in his dressing room, and the staff and everyone were in the downstairs bar of the Royal Albert Hall. So it's fine. It's fine. Some might say that there might have been better conversation. Who knows? I'll keep telling myself that.
He probably would have just given you shit because City have beaten Newcastle now and had it over for quite a while.
It's a funny story actually. Before I went into the Royal Albert Hall, this going back to what I said about being bumped into with people. A woman before the show, sadly can't remember her name, but she was like, "Oh, Emil, how are you?" And I was like, "I'm fine. How are you?" Yeah. Again, not going back to the previous reputation, but she said all that, and I was like, "Oh, great." She was like, "We saw Noel Gallagher in Dusseldorf the night before Dortmund, and he could hear all the accents in the crowd going, Noel, and he was like, "Oh, what are you all saying that for? You big Geordie." Basically is what he said. So she'd been at the gig with this German fella, and he was like, "Oh, I'm like I'm a Dortmund fan. I run a supporters club out here." And she was like, "Oh, well, we might see you tomorrow." And then, while in Dortmund after the day after, she was with this group of Newcastle fans, and she told me that this German fella comes running over to them all. He goes, "It is you, the Geordie." And basically, all these Newcastle fans were like, "What are you saying that for?" Like, and she was like, "No, I'll explain. It's because Noel Gallagher called us all that, and he thinks so." Yeah, I loved it. It was brilliant. Yeah, very brilliant.
Unreal.
Oh man,
some story.
Thank you for sharing all of that. It's a hell of a path, I suppose. You said to us when you previously used to have your head buried in the history books. Obviously, you end up where you've ended up. And so I think the one thing to say.
Agree, but I'm good at telling my own history. That's for sure.
Well, I think the one thing is looking at the club. I mean, look, yes, we've definitely fallen on better times, the takeover, the Eddie Howe era, but you can kind of see the club is very much future thinking and progressive when it comes to opening the doors to the club, looking behind the scenes and running events for fans. I think it's refreshing where there's a history of just not doing that for many
there was another thing I was kind of going to say was, a lot of people talk about the takeover, the good and bad. Obviously, never ever going to compare just my bit to it. But the amount of, like you say, the openness of the club, and if the takeover hadn't happened, I wouldn't have done that interview with Sky. So many other channels wouldn't have got the chances to do it. I know you've had Matty from the Magpie channel on and stuff. The amount of times he's been on TV as a result of it, and all the other people who get regular stuff with radio and things. Newcastle are suddenly, people are paying attention to us in the media again, and it sounds awful, but I've heard it from the horse's mouth because I used to live with someone who worked for TalkSport, and he was like, "Yeah, they're trying to get more Newcastle on, but that was because they're aware that we are on that trajectory now." So it's very nice, but the takeover has done a lot more for fan media at Newcastle, and that will, that'll have the rough and the smooth, because we will get eventually your talking fans in the same way. It's like the people who support Liverpool some days, and you're thinking, why? And then you wonder it. And so we'll get people in bedrooms who do the same thing, but that is the price of it. And like I say, I'm forever grateful for that day where I ran down to St James's Park. No matter what side of things you are, and whatever kind of criticisms we have to keep in mind. But yeah, no, for me personally, it's quite mad that triggered a lot more stuff,
including an appearance on the Irish Mag Show podcast. But we don't want to spoil it.
Pinnacle was right there.
Excellent. Brilliant. Look, thanks again, Emil, for sharing all of that. I know you've probably gone through some of those stories a few times as well, but I think we love talking about origin stories here when we get guests on, and including ourselves. And obviously, when you're obviously local, we like to hear the ins and outs of what goes on, because let's face it, we don't get over as much. But when we do, I
think I'll do quite well on the Irish Mags one, because if you get into a conversation with anyone from Ireland, you're going to get the full story. So I might as well tell it now. So that's good. That's 100%. Good with me, man. That's good with me.
Yeah, and our listeners are well used to it as well. Right, let's move on to our spotlight topic for this week, fellas. We've mentioned the takeover. And obviously the timing of all that has seen us up our game, I suppose, in terms of the quality, the level, the star names that we've been signing. But I think it's fair to say, lads, that as a club, we do have quite a rich history of, I don't want to say it's like signing star names, but bringing in iconic players from abroad that have not only kind of made a huge impact in terms of performances, but also their kind of affinity with the fans and their establishment of themselves into Newcastle legend and folklore. So I thought with that, it would be a nice little idea if we talk about our own top 5 foreign players to have played for Newcastle. So Newcastle's best foreign imports of the Premier League era. So as I said, lads, you had a bit of homework. And Tev, I'm looking at you. I hope you've done your homework, because if you haven't,
I've done.
We'll be having words. So what we might do to kick this off is we'll go around. I want to hear all of your kind of top 5s. Maybe if you just quickly list them out, and your personal, I suppose, reason for each player, quick as you can, I suppose. And I'll do my own one as well, of course. I'll be interested to see where there's overlap. I'll be interested to see where there's no overlap, and see how many players we actually come out with, because we do have the unenviable task of putting together a unanimous top 5 where all of that friendliness that you've been experiencing so far might go out the window. And word to the warning, we did our own best 11 for Newcastle in the Premier League era, and it did ruffle a few feathers, is all I'm going to say, across the social media. So I think we'll give Emil a little break, because he's given us we'll give him a break, because I saw him open a can there. He might want a little sip. We'll go over to Alan to
nursing it very well. Nursing it very
well. Top 5 secretly. So, Alan, do you want to bring us through your top 5 foreign players for Newcastle in the PL era, which obviously, as we said, may be your best or maybe your favourite?
It's a bit of both. So, my favourite ever, Naby Solano, just a little wizard, absolute unbelievable footballer. Second place is Philippe Albert, unreal footballer. Some of the stories from Steve Howie that he does on the podcast now do have me in tears about that man. So he's just a pinnacle of a Newcastle type of player. Third is Fabrizio Colaccini. Doesn't get enough credit for what he was for us. We were stinking when he was our centre half, and he was good. Fourth place, I'm giving it to Laurent Robert, partially for knocking out Bernard in the ball, but other than that, it's free kicks and that left foot. He used to have a goal of the season competition with himself all the time. And fifth place, I'm going for Czech Tiote, because of all the players I could bring back and put in the squad now, Czech Tiote is exactly what we need right now, and he was unbelievable for us. Just went around kicking people, and I loved it.
Can't disagree with that. like it's funny because Emil, you told us about being at that 4-4 game. Tiote was not known for goals, never mind screamers, and never mind goals that had such an impact. But as Alan said, we could do with him in the squad now. That's a good top 5. Okay, put that on hold for a moment while we go over to Tev to see if he's done his homework, and let's see if Alan and Tev are on the same wavelength. They often are when they're drinking pints in the bleaker, but let's see if they're on the same wavelength tonight.
So my team, my top 5 has a storyline. It's called Kamikaze and Finesse. So that'll give you kind of an insight.
Two great players right there, by the way. I must say.
So 5, for us going with the Kamikaze with Papi Cisse. So if you ever think of a player who probably can't play with other players in play, can't do 1-2s, etc., but anywhere in the pitch, you can just score. Just random goals, finesse, Kamikaze, you can see. So Papi Cisse, just when he came in, like the goals that he was scoring were outrageous, just Chelsea, etc. I think when he was scoring, goalkeepers were looking and kind of saying, what? He hasn't kicked the ball the whole game. He's been offside, but he scores goals. So he'd be my 5th player. 4th, Ben Arfa. I love a player that takes players on. I love players that run with the ball by himself. Like, remember the Bolton goal, the Blackburn going, etc. Like, he was given glimpses. Obviously, if there was more consistency in terms of glimpses, I'd say he would have went to a decent level, He got the niece, though. In terms of 3, Bruno. So, a good mention of Bruno. Just the class that he has on the pitch. I don't know if he's watched the England-Brazil game, but he just oozes class, man. He just oozes class. I think he's been a revelation since he's come in. And, who doesn't love him, his little celebrations as well. 2, Laurent Robert. He used to have a goal of the season competition. I agree with Alan every single season. Shout out to his 2 goals versus Tottenham in 2003. Jesus Christ, his left foot is a bullet, So, I thought, you just make you happy in terms of when he gets the ball. And I love wingers who join in the play in terms of attacking. Because obviously we have our strikers, we know our strikers can score, but I love wingers that are confident enough, to take the ball and wallop it, And then number 1, going back to the land of croissants, Yohan Cabaye, number 1. When you talk about class, you're talking about a fella that can take the game from the scruff of the neck. Obviously, Bruno can do it as well, but Cabaye, you'd know when he's playing, and he was a game changer as well. That Manchester United free kick, I think everybody remembers it, just oozes class everywhere he goes, and he seems like a decent fella, he seems like he seems like he drink a pint of Guinness, like, he seems like a good lad, So, that's my top 5. He probably did. He's probably doing it now. Probably do it in the future.
He was over with PSG, wasn't he? He was over. He's the youth director or whatever, academy director, I think, at PSG, and he was over for the game, and he was doing a bit of pundit work. So maybe Emil was sneaking pints with them out the back at some point.
Some brown ale.
Find out.
I'd be sneaking off to a hotel room with him. To be honest, lads, that's the thing.
Irish Mags after dark.
That's the one.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Ben Arfa as well. It's such a cliche, but he's one of those streets we'll never forget players for, especially for Newcastle. The goals he scored and the clips, the YouTube montages and all of that. Okay, we've got 2 top 5s from Alan and Tev. Now, Emil, there's no pressure here, but only one player made both of their lists, which means we're so far on 9 individual players to choose from. Let's hear yours, Emil, and see if we've any overlap with the 2 lads.
I think there's going to be a few, but I will add some. Number 5, and I'm very much this. Let me just say, this order is very much going in. The more recent they are, the less love, because as you say, the streets and the cult following and the love for the players at the time is grown stronger in their absence. Bruno comes in at number 5. Very much what Tev was saying. Alongside Trippier, who we can't pick in this one. Those were the 2 players that transformed Newcastle's playing style just on their own, really. The class that they brought to the team is second to none. And for us, for any frustrating day that Bruno has, I wouldn't even say he has a frustrating day or a game. He can always just produce something that can do it. I can't remember which game it was recently, but it was probably, I think it was the Wolves game, where he's very understated some games and you don't really realize it. And then I'll be like, oh God, he's given the ball away again. Oh God, he's done that again. And I'll be like, Oh, and he's just put the greatest ball I've ever seen in. That's cool. So yeah, love that. Love when a player does that for me. Yeah, Fabian Schär's going in at number 4. Handsome devil that he is. That's pretty much only reason why I put him in. I'm not going to lie. But no, I've always had a bit of like a spiritual connection with Fabian Schär. I loved how straight talking he was. I still love how straight talking he was. But that interview after the Southampton game, it just said everyone had a shit game. It's just like, it's just gone down in my head and being like, it's like, look at that man's face and tell me it can't get much worse. Believe me, it could. But yeah, just that again, and you know, the love that he's getting at the moment as well, I think is great. The fact that, again, you know, scoring the Champions League for Newcastle after being on Steve Bruce's pile of get out, then that's amazing. Johan Kabay, who we've said, comes in at number 3. You know, not only for the Guinness and the chicken botley pie chat, but yeah, I think that, again, that for me, a bit like Teot is when we started to sign players, and I thought to myself, I was like, Newcastle are actually getting some good players for a cheap amount of money. Like, what's going on? You know, Graham Carr, for all of his, you know, bad shouts, he got some so right in those early days. And yeah, you know, it's just a shame what happened, really. But, you know, you're never going to say no to France, really, are you? To go home and do that again. Don't sell Kabay. And yeah, number two, Nobby Solano. You know, out of the early days of, you're saying favourite players and things, Bellamy was good, and I think Solano was probably up there as well. And again, for a weird reason, that it just seemed nice that we had a Peruvian in the team. Like, it was different. You know, other players might have a Brazilian or an Argentinian, or, you know, you'll have some flair player from around the world. But I was like, we've got the Peruvian. No one else has got the Peruvian. So it's a little bit with Almiron at the moment. It's like we're the only ones with like a decent Paraguayan in the team. It's like it's one of those nice little quirks. Funnily enough, the Dolphin in London, where the London supporters go, they've got a Peruvian restaurant connected to it. Like upstairs, some guys just running a Peruvian do. I don't know if it's anything to do with Nobby Solano, but I just like that, again, you can watch Newcastle go out of the FA Cup some weeks and then have a lovely bowl of ceviche straight after, which does lessen the blow. You must know that. So yeah, Solano, just like you say, magician. The way he hit that ball against Arsenal with the side of his foot, or like the ball went through, I don't know what he did to this day. Just incredible. Maybe it was Everton. But yeah, then number 1, I'm surprised I've not heard his name, Demba Ba, coming in there.
Ooh.
As the greatest player that barely played for Newcastle. I think that's the best way of describing him. It's just like, blink and you'll miss it, but we had a star there. And if it weren't for that poxy release clause, that's up there with lowlights, I have to say. Yeah. Chelsea have activated an 8 million release clause. That's like pulling Mike Ashley up in front of the bloody Hague, as far as I'm concerned. That is bang out of order. How the hell did we do that?
Should have gave him more. Should have gave him more syrup.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly. But that's it. You know, the syrup interview, that was just before that Man United game where he sliced the ball in. Demba's scored however many since Ramadan. I still sing that to this day. Anyone who saw me in Dortmund will attest to that. It's just one of the best ones. And, you know, there's just so many like little moments. Like the fact that he was getting called out by Stoke fans for failing a medical with them. And then scoring a hat-trick against them on Halloween. I remember watching that in the first year of uni. It's just like, you know, it's like Stoke love that though, don't they? You know, one of their players nearly broke Aaron Ramsey's leg, but they boo Aaron Ramsey as a result of it, despite being one of the worst injuries ever. So yeah, Demba Ba just transformed again, similar way to Bruno Trippier. We got him in. We probably had, in my opinion, the best striker since Alan Shearer.
Yeah,
at Newcastle.
I think it's ridiculous how many goals. Like as you mentioned it was a fleeting Newcastle career. Was he January signing as well? I think?
No, he came in the summer.
Maybe. Okay.
Cisse January. That's it. Cisse came in and upset his flow, which I'm always a bit about.
But he has scored a lot of goals for Newcastle, despite it being a like a relatively short career. So imagine what could have been similar to Les Ferdinand if you go way back to the 96. I think he did 2 decent seasons at Newcastle, and then they decided to take the money when he moved on. I think to Spurs. Should have been and could have been much more. Okay, this is interesting, lads. This is starting to take shape with a few overlapping names in common, but also some more unique ones. I think we're up to 12 unique names here now after 3 rounds, 3 top 5s from yourselves, lads. I'm going to give you mine. There'll be no surprises that mine is maybe a teeny tiny bit more old school. I'm not going to go into details on my own age, but I am the greyest man on this podcast by a mile every week.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Catch you soon.
Yeah. It might be the Guinness, but that's all I'll say about that. Number 5, Laurent Robert. We've all pretty much spoken about him. His left foot alone is getting him into this list, as we've seen with all the goals he scored. So simple as that. And I loved when we had Warren Barton on the pod a couple of months ago, and he was just talking about the life that Laurent Robert is leading now, where he just sees him like on Instagram smoking cigars and drinking wine.
Incredible, isn't it?
We all want to be with Laurent Robert.
Never seen a man have so many barbecues in one year. It's just incredible stuff.
It's like Bruno in the summer.
He hasn't aged either, really. Like, you know what I mean? Obviously, it's a long time, but he hasn't drastically aged. All that wine keeps him healthy. Number 4 is a name we've not mentioned yet this evening, boys. Faustino Asprilla. Now, this is one where I found it impossible not to put him on the list. And again, his tenure was fleeting. It wasn't like he was there a long time. And my memories of Tino Asprilla scoring loads of goals. He did not score that many goals when you look at the numbers. When he did it, it was just like mind-blowing. Obviously, there's that Champions League hat-trick. And then there's a celebration that obviously me as a kid, that's what I remember trying to replicate that on the pitch unsuccessfully. And I did have an Asprilla shirt as well. So another new one onto the list there at number 4, as is my number 3. And this one is, again, sometimes I find it hard because you lads will know my French connections in terms of I live with a girl who's French, but also the French have wound us up big time in the last couple of years. David Ginola. Now, again, similar story. David Ginola wasn't there that long, but for me, the David Ginola signing, the pictures, the media, the jersey, the pose with the model girls, basically, that he's done, that was for me like very representative of that entertainer's era. And again, just he didn't stay long enough to really, really be a Newcastle legend, but like he was a ridiculously good signing, and obviously he went on to Spurs and Villa. I just don't think he ever was for them what he was for us, and could have been for us. And then finally, number 2 is Bruno. Straight up to the modern era, because I just love Bruno's connection with the fans. I love the fact that his dad is like a celebrity cruising around Newcastle.
In the concourse.
Yeah, just that man can't go anywhere now around the city without getting lauded, taking selfies. Like that doesn't happen, lads. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't happen. Like if you think about it, like when Ronaldinho or Zlatan or whoever have gone to different clubs, this wasn't happening. But for some reason, it's happening in Newcastle. Bruno's dad, but obviously Bruno. Look, I think Tev, you might have mentioned it. Like the way he engages with fans during the game, celebrating, good tackles, and when he kicks the ball out in the touch. And I think you might have said it, Emil, the Wolves game. I was at the Wolves game. And when you're at a match, it's so different to watching on TV because you can see everything. He was by a mile the best player on that pitch, like without question. He ran the game. Even, he doesn't have to be every single pass perfect and scoring or assisting, but you could just see the quality. He was better than anyone else. And the final one, we said it. We've all nearly said it. Solano tops my list. I could watch Alberto Solano cross the ball all day. He was just a beautiful technician, which is interesting, lads, because when we bring all those 4 sets of 5 together, only 2 players have actually made 3 lists. We haven't had one common player that made all 4 lists. Maybe that's reflective of age. Maybe it's reflective of our own personal affinities to players. But there are 2 players who made 3 lists, and that is Alberto Solano and Laurent Robert. Solano obviously signed from Boca Juniors way back, I think it was 96. I have a bit of trivia for you lads here, lads. And this could actually be our quiz. We might not have time for a quiz this week. So I'm going to open it to you now as a form of a quiz. One of his former teammates at Boca Juniors nicknamed him the Maestrito, the Maestrito. I don't know if my accent was any good there. Does anyone want to guess who that teammate was in 1997? 6, 7.
Riquelme?
Nope.
Ooh.
Maestro. Who played for Boca Juniors? No, I was 4 at the time, so this is harsh.
Yeah.
You should remember this. He would be considerably older than Riquelme.
Oh, wow.
Batistuta wasn't playing for them then, was he?
No. Older again.
It's Maradona?
The winner of this week's mini quiz is EmilFranchi. Diego Maradona said that about Alberto Solano.
If that man's going to stay playing for any club, it's going to be somewhere in Argentina where they can sustain him, let's be honest.
Absolutely love that. And then, we said Laurent Robert as well. Laurent Robert is the other one who it made, what do we say, 3 lists?
Sorry if that's sacrilege. I do agree fully with that. I think it's just, again, it's just the memories of it. But I did see Laurent Robert score the goal that then got stolen by the fella in goal. So that was like, I was at the day where the day that was filmed, and his free kick was actually scored by Santiago Munez in the film.
Yeah. We were at the same game.
All of us, yeah.
Yeah.
Drinking Guinness. Lads, just give me 1 second. Sorry. 1 second.
He's getting in trouble off the boss.
Getting in trouble.
Yeah.
You said an hour ago.
It's my bloody Wi-Fi, eh?
No, we said the lads are slagging me. Stop.
It's good thing he's got those headphones on.
I told you, lads, the French are after me. They're always trying to
They're
talking good about French.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got Solano, we've got Robert, lads. I'd probably be leaning toward, but by the sounds of it, and I've written down kind of your list, lads, and it looks like Solano is kind of on the higher end of Emil's list. He's at the top of Alan's list on my own. So I think we're looking at Solano in at number 1 and Robert in at number 2.
Okay.
Now, we have a predicament on our hands. Only 2 other players picked up 2 votes. We saw Johan Cabaye, who was actually in Tev and Emil's lists. And then we had Bruno, who featured in my own list, as well as Emil. So park that for a second, lads, because that could be number 3 and 4. That means we have to choose one of the following. Are you ready? Philippe Albert, Fabrizio Colacini, Papi Cisse, Czech Tiote, Hatem Ben Arfa, Demba Ba, Fabian Scher, Faustino Asprilla, and David Ginola. So if we do go with Cabaye and Bruno, we have to pick one from that list. So I suppose what I'll say, lads, is I'm going to open to the floor. Does anyone feel strongly enough that one of those single vote players should be in the list ahead of Cabaye or Bruno?
I think we need to probably look into the 90s, don't we? Because otherwise, it's, and I think Ginola has to just be it. In my opinion, Asprilla is all for just the one game value, I guess, and a few more. But I think Ginola, him and Newcastle are just hand in hand. That kit as well. Yeah. Anyway, that would be my view. Okay. If you were to do anything else, you could maybe combine Cisse and Bar, because that was like a half and half season for them. It was like that lovely Senegalese partnership that we had. It was brilliant. But you can't really turn away from the entertainers at this point.
Yeah, Ginola, I'd say Ginola.
Tev is looking at Ginola. Alan. Yeah. It looks like some
can't disagree
there.
with it, yeah.
So here's the $1 million question. Are we keeping Bruno and Cabaye? So we're kind of looking at Solano at the top, Robert number 2, Bruno and Cabaye in 3 and 4, which we'll settle on, and then potentially falling on Ginola number 5. Remembering the names I gave you there, lads, is there anyone else that you feel needs to be advocated for, needs a final shout?
I just think that one of them players went on strike to force a move out of the club, and it grinds my gears to this day.
No, you're right. What happens to you, Paul, if we take the third possible Frenchman of this top 5 out? Just with your current relationship with the French, are they holding something to your head right now? Which is why we've ended up in this predicament. Is that what it is?
She's currently poisoned.
Is there a bayonet just out of shots? Is that what it is?
As the famous line goes, lads, I prefer not to speak. If I speak, big trouble.
Les Miserables, eh?
I will live without Kabay in the list. Now, I was at that game where he scored that goal against Manchester United in Old Trafford where we won. I was at that as well. So like, I loved Kabay, but again, for similar reasons in terms of tenure and the circumstances, right? Are we looking at bumping Kabay out, lads, potentially for somebody here? I wasn't expecting this.
Did Ginola spit his dummy out when he left?
I mean, I think
was that Dalglish's fault?
I think it was more
there
we
was
were
an element of
cashing in
both.
on him. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Kabay needs to go. We are literally selling Kabay, lads. What's going on?
Au revoir.
He literally said,
Au
"Don't
revoir.
sell Kabay," and now we're selling him. Okay, so I've got Solano, I've got Robert. I think Bruno is probably falling into number 3 here, lads.
Yeah.
we're
Okay,
happy with Bruno. And I've got a Ginola potentially in and around 4 or 5, which means we have space for one more.
Oh wow!
And again, I'll mention a couple of names: Albert Colacini, Cisse Tiote, Ben Arfa, Demaba, Fabian Scher, Aspria. Wow.
I would say Colacini because of how good he was in such a bad side. And the fact that he was getting into the Argentina team with Lionel Messi is amazing.
Yeah.
I just can't get over the start of his career at Newcastle. Sorry.
Yeah, that's
I just it was effectively what Newcastle fans have done with Colacini is hand him the most improved award at after school football, which is an award that I got, and that everyone knows that's because you were clearly so bad in the first time. Everyone's kind of going bloody. It's a bit like Joe Linton now. I would say,
Yeah.
I think that you've got to be. There's far more consistent performers in there with. But I know what you mean, captain at the time when it all went downhill and did stay with us. There is a case. There is a case for Colacini.
There is a case.
Great chant as well. Great chant.
Wouldn't mind curly hair.
Do you know what? That was the one thing I was going to say. The one thing for me, as well as being quite like iconic looking with the hair. I think I was joking when Ireland played Belgium at the weekend. They had Wout Faes in centre back, and I was like, it's great to see Colacini getting a game. But the chant itself is probably up there with the best. Or one of the best player chants that we have.
Lyrically, it's just beautiful.
And the new one as well. Of any player that does look like Colacini, we just get to sing the new one at them as well. So
yeah,
no one's mentioned Gutierrez, which I was surprised. Right?
Yeah.
Again, it was like cameo kind of player. I think in terms of when he really stood out. I don't know. That's the way my brain goes on it.
He's did a lot of work, but there is the goal, of course. So
yeah,
there is the goal. Yeah,
the goal. But yeah, no. I mean, I think there's a case for Colacini over some of the like you say those. I mean, out of all of them, he's probably the longest server in that list, isn't he?
Yeah,
yeah, he must be.
I would imagine he's not far off it. Yeah, in terms of number of appearances, and to be fair to him, stayed for a lot of the bad times. Probably could have gone. Do you know what I mean? There was probably offers there.
I did love how his dad rescued him from Newcastle as well, which I always quite like.
There was having an extramarital.
Yeah, it was quite fun actually when he did leave, because I think that's like the most South American exit you can have. He's like, yeah, you're going back to a team you've never heard of, San Lorenzo. Yeah, you've got to leave the UK now, and he just went.
Gone.
This is the end.
That's how Paul gets out of this podcast afterwards.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I can tell you now, lads, I could be extradited very soon. No, we're all good. I've managed to get through 17 episodes so far, lads, so I'm clearly not going anywhere. Okay, let's wrap this up, lads. This is harder than I thought it would be. That's what we won't go there. Solano, Robert, Bruno, Colacini, and Ginola, or are we looking at Ginola
Colacini.
Ginola Colacini. Emil is still thinking about it.
Well, I didn't see Ginola properly, so I kind of have to give you the benefit of the doubt there. But it is still just that picture, just the pictures of him in the kit.
Iconic.
The man never looks bad, and I always think that. I don't know if it's real, but there's the one of Jimmy Nail wearing our training kit, and it just says David Ginola underneath as well. So always love to see that.
I think it is what it is. Okay, I'm calling it there. So lads, we are in at number 1, Alberto Solano. Number 2, Laurent Robert. Number 3, Bruno Guimaraes. Number 4, David Ginola. And number 5, Fabrizio Colacini. Apologies to Johan Kabay. Apologies to Faustino Esprit. Apologies to Demba Ba, Emil, who was your number one.
Syrup.
And could be harshly done by. And apologies to Alexander Mitrovic, Timuri Kitspaya, Emmanuel Riviere, Cisco,
Zura Kishnishvili, of course. Yeah.
Baller.
Wow.
Marvo.
Round of applause. Pronunciation. Round of applause for the pronunciation there.
Yangambuya.
And as I mentioned in the past, Stefan Givarsh was a particular favourite of mine.
Quality.
They're more of the honourable mentions. Wow, well, let's see how much controversy our top 5 results in, lads, this week once we release the show. For our listeners, do let us know your thoughts in the comments. Obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, give us your own top 5. Let's see if you were widely different in terms of opinion to where we've ended up. I'll expect to see Krisho in the comments throwing around his ones and attempting to get Jeff Hendrick in there. And of course, while you're there, do be sure to like and subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or any of these places, drop us a follow and a rating. I think, lads, that's a good time to wrap up this week's episode, because I'm almost exhausted in terms of tracking and counting where our top 5s have come from there and then looking to see the overlaps. I wasn't expecting us to come out with, like, what did I say, 13 different selections.
It's hard. It's a really hard one.
one.
Even to look back and see the amount we've got, because I think that one of the interesting things is that, you know, prior to the 90s, you are struggling to find many, like many Premier League teams. So, there's been some good ones.
And hopefully, plenty more to come. In a few months or years, we could be talking about Joe Linton or Isaac, or, you know, as Alan repeatedly says, we could be talking about the likes of Benjamin Sesko or Ederson or any of those. Sesko's the one for Alan, in fairness.
That's it.
Emil.
Mr. Quietly. Mbappe.
Bring back Mbemba.
Yeah.
I thought we'd gone the whole episode without something ridiculously outrageous being said. Without Krisho, Emil, well done. You've managed to close that. No, we'll see. Emil, I have to say thank you so much for giving us your time this evening. Great to have you on the Irish Mag Show for the first time.
Lads.
Hopefully you're not too traumatized by your first encounter with us, and hopefully you get over to Ireland sometime as well to do an Irish Mags show or pint.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I went to Dublin for the first time last year, and it was sensational. Spent a lot of time in Belfast and Derry as well. So yeah, very, very keen to head over myself at some point.
Excellent. Well, shout us up because we have plenty of venues that you can attend. Before we let you go, in case any of our listeners don't already know, can you tell them where to find you? Not like physically, we don't need your address. But
yeah. Oh God, did I say one of the cities wrong? Oh God, no, please. No, so that was it. Yeah, the Stoker's is going to come and get me. I'm just on Twitter. I'm on Instagram as well at Emil_Franchi. But if you do want to try and listen, I don't know what the app's reach is like in Ireland, but I'm on Absolute Radio on a weekend on a very early morning. Sadly, the time difference isn't existent, so it won't matter what time you wake up, you'll still be knackered like me. But just keep an eye on there, and look forward to trying maybe producing a bit more Newcastle United content for everyone, because that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Absolutely love to see it. We'll include links to all of those below as well. And as we said, check out
how many characters you got in there. That's the only thing.
We've had a few characters on this podcast and a few characters in the Irish community as well, to say the least. But we will include all those links below. And as I said, check out the some of the Newcastle United content Emil has done. Particularly, again, you brought me straight back to my childhood, Emil, and I know Scale Electric must outdate you, because you're considerably younger than me, but to watch you playing Scale Electric with a few of those players.
We actually played it just before me and my dad went to the 69 Fairs Cup final. So yeah.
Nice.
I'll throw back right to the start there just to bring it full there.
You have aged as well as Laurent Robert. I want whatever that wine is that you're drinking, because it's going well.
The cigars
and the wine. Excellent. Right. That's an end to the show, guys. Thanks very much to everyone for listening. You will hear from us again next week. We may even have some games to talk about. So until then, how are the lads? Slán Guffol, and we'll see you all very soon. Say goodbye, gentlemen.
Slán lad.
Cheers.
Nice one.
Goodbye, and goodbye.